What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode on the Climb the Pocket YouTube channel. My name is Steve with my co-host, as always, Ryan McGinley. You can find him on Twitter at Bootleg Fantasy. You can find me at Steve_CTP. Climb the Pocket, your one-stop shop for all fantasy football content, leading you to a fantasy football championship this 2021 season. In this video today, we have draft tips and strategy. It seems kind of generic, but it's actually something that does change year to year in each draft. This year being 2021, there are certain draft tips and strategies that will help you win this year's draft as opposed to last year's or the year prior. So we're going to give you each our top 5 draft tips and strategies for this year's draft. Before we do, we're going to get into the giveaway. The last couple weeks, we've been offering up a Keenan Allen signed mini helmet. And you went over on Twitter, you retweeted it, you commented on the video, you subscribed, and we really, really appreciate it. There was a lot of people in the drawing, but there can only be one winner, and that winner is FF_Monsters. Congratulations, you have won the signed Keenan Allen mini helmet. We will be reaching out to you on Twitter for your information, so congratulations. More giveaways to come, people. So if you were just watching this video and you did not enter for this one, we got plenty more coming this season as soon as a few weeks from today. So look out for that. You're going to want to subscribe, ring that bell, like the video if you like today's video. But hey, let's get into the video without further ado. Let's go over to Ryan for his number one, not necessarily his top draft tip or strategy, but what's his first one on the list?
Yeah, Steve. I preach this all the time. If you've been in the mock draft videos with us, you've heard me say it. And if you haven't been in the mock draft videos with us, it's kind of insulting. But regardless, safety in the first 4 rounds is a big one for me. You don't want to take your Hail Mary passes in the first couple rounds because you can't really win your fantasy league in the draft, but you can definitely lose it. You can 100% lose your season in the draft. So you've got to get guys that you know are going to be easy safety blankets. So if you get Alvin Kamara, that's a great value. He's a great pick, and he's safe. If you get Travis Kelce, you know he's safe. You can't be taking big swings and expect just an easy season. So as long as you're safe in the first couple rounds, your draft is okay with me.
Example of a risky pick in the first couple rounds, what would you say?
Ooh.
And at what draft position based on ADP?
Well, I feel it would have been Packers players up until your boy's back. I've got to go with, even though I've been banging the drum for him recently, he's a low-hanging fruit pick here, and people will relate, is Joe Mixon in the second and third round. He's burned a lot of people. The offense seems to be pass-heavy with a bad offensive line and a quarterback that is going to need to rely on him. It's going to be an interesting pick if you take Joe Mixon, and that's why he's slipping a little bit because people are tending to be a little safer, and they're staying away from Mixon. So, Joe Mixon, if you get him at the right price, if you get him in the third round, you feel good, but second round, not safe enough for me.
Yeah, I would say also, there are players like you just mentioned, Joe Mixon, that come with a certain amount of risk. Definitely don't add that with overdrafting that risky player. You might have a lot of conviction for Joe Mixon and you really want him on your team.
Yep,
You're a big
100%.
believer in Joe Mixon. You cannot overdraft a player that already has risk attached to him because if you lose on that, it's a double whammy. So you're going to want to avoid that. Let's move on to my number one, or my first draft tip or strategy, and it actually is to draft one of the top 8 to 9 tight ends, but don't draft one of the big 3. And hear me out, because I think it's very popular this year to draft one of those top 3 tight ends, because everyone wants to see Kelce, Waller, or Kittle on your team. It is just so good looking, but it's a year late for some of those guys, like Waller. You got him at a value last year, and now he is slowly creeping up into the second round, and that's pretty rich for a tight end. Certainly you're going to have that weekly matchup winner against your component or your opponent if you have one of these guys in your team. But at what cost? You're missing out on, if you draft Darren Waller in round 2, you're missing out on a potential player like DK Metcalf or Antonio Gibson on the running back side. Someone of that stature that can be a real solid block for your team all year long at those positions. And it kind of limits you. You're not able to really take a quarterback early. You're not really able to do that early, in like the 5th round or the 6th round. If you see Kyler there or something, it kind of hinders on you. If you took a tight end early, you feel a little limited, like you're able to take a quarterback early as well. And just looking at the other tight ends from range 4 to 8 or so, you probably got Pitts, Hawkinson, Andrews, Goddard. Throw Noah Fant in there, Logan Thomas, Tyler Higbee. I know I went past 9, but these are all guys you can wait for and go wait for that tight end wheelhouse there, in the later half of the first 10 rounds. And I think those guys are pretty solid. They have potential to be a top 5 tight end. And if you don't go for one of those guys, there are certainly upside options later like Irv Smith and Adam Troutman, and like I said, I know it's really nice to have one of these top 3 tight ends on your team, but you're really missing out on a really good skill position player. If you decide to take Kelsey in round 1, that's going to be great. He's going to be probably your top receiver on your team. But you're probably at the back of the first round. You're going to be forced to take a running back the next round. And who knows what's going to be there at the end of round 3 and beginning of round 4. It's just you can try the mock drafts, see if you like it. But I think the tight end wheelhouse is right around 5 to 8. And a guy that we talked about a lot, Dallas Goedert, there was some good news that Jalen Hurts has been looking for him in practice. I really like to hear that. So he's a guy I'll be targeting. I'll be looking at guys like Tyler Higbee. They'll probably be at the top of my list this year. So try employing that strategy. Do some mock drafts, practice that up. Ryan, what's your number 2?
I mean, this is forever the Tyler Higbee podcast, but Tyler Higbee walked so Robert Tonyan could run, and I'm a big Tonyan fan. He was, I think, 3rd in passer rating when targeted amongst all players. So, if you get Tonyan late and he gives you 8 touchdowns this year because Aaron Rodgers is back, you don't feel too bad. I agree. Sometimes paying the hefty price for a tight end, especially I love George Kittle. He's one of my favorites in the NFL.
You can tell by the tone of your voice.
Yeah, he's
George Kittle.
Listen, I do love George Kittle, but I've got to preface it and say that he doesn't stay healthy. I don't love that. They're going to be a run-first team. Don't love that either for him. They might have a rookie quarterback. Don't love that either. And Darren Waller is, I believe he's technically holding out. He was at the open practice for the fans because he wants a new contract. And you never like to see that. So he might get off to a slightly slower start than you'd like. And you're paying him a premium price. So you got to be safe in the first 4 rounds. That's where the 2 rules come in. But my next rule, modified best player available. A lot of people like to pigeonhole themselves and go into the draft kind of with a strategy where this round they're going to take this player, this round they're going to take this position. And I've never been a real believer in 0 RB, 0 wide receiver, just because you're losing value if you hamstring yourself going for that idea. If you're taking the best value there, you could eventually trade them. They're trade pieces in the first couple weeks. I think by trying to stick to some type of script, you kind of lose sight of what you're trying to do, and that's win ultimately. So you want the best players on your team. You don't really want to be picking guys in a tier below because you want to stay in that role. So I'm all about picking the best player available, and depending on how your team shakes out, you may make a couple moves before week 1. That's fine. That's the name of the game. That's why everyone loves fantasy football, because you get to pretend to be a GM. But you always want the value, and value's king. So make sure you're not going in there with a set mindset on what you're doing, because just take the best guy.
Yeah, my number 2 is actually pretty similar. There's just a few small differences, but I'll just add to that because it's perfect. Your league isn't won at the draft, as you mentioned, although I do think it's 65 draft, 35% in-season moves like trades and waiver wires. Those can still help you shape a championship roster for the second half of the season. And during the draft, depending on what you do, if you draft a running back and 3 wide receivers, don't reach on a player just because you're looking to fill that position and you're lacking. You might think that you need to go get a running back at the end of round 5 or the beginning of round 5 because you went running back, tight end, multiple or 3 receivers, and you're like, well, I need a second running back. Certainly, you do need a second running back, but the draft is not the only place to acquire that running back. If you're making smart picks and you're drafting good players, as you mentioned, like those wide receivers or whatever player falls to you, and you're drafting the best player available, if these guys perform like you drafted them to, you can package them away and get yourself a running back later. You can find one on the waiver wire. It happens every year. You got to be smart. It's how engaged are you in your fantasy league, looking at the waiver wire, looking at rosters, looking at needs on people's teams. It's very engaging. So don't pin yourself in a position to where you think you have to take a certain player. Certainly, if you get to a certain point and you have no running backs but one, and it's round 8, you're probably gonna have to bite the bullet just to fill the roster spot to start someone. But we don't want to get there. But like I said, going with what you said, best player available in most instances, and try to pay attention to what spots in your roster, how much position depth you have. Like, you always like to draft even, not on purpose, but it kind of goes that way because it makes you feel comfortable. I think a lot of people are like that as well, but there's no set strategy that you have to pin yourself to. Let's move on to your number 3 tip or strategy.
Yeah, so don't be at the end of a position run.
Oh yeah, I love this one.
If you see there's been the last 8 picks, 5 of them have been like quarterbacks, and then you still need a quarterback, don't take one, just because you're probably going to be okay waiting because everyone else is taking that, and you can get value. Like I'm going to keep banging the drum that value is the key to fantasy football, and you don't want to be taking Ryan Tannehill when somebody is available. Like, I feel like guys get kind of stuck in the mindset that they need to fill out their lineup immediately in the first. Like, if you've got a 9 player starting lineup, that they have to have their 9 starting players in the first 9 rounds. You know what I mean? So make sure that you don't catch yourself at the tail end of this. It happens to the best of us. Just kind of weather it. I know on the mock drafts, I've been making sure I wasn't taking a tight end at the end of tight end runs. And the computer kind of got in my face and dunked on me and took a couple of extra tight ends. But you can read your league generally on how they're going to draft. Don't take a position because they're going quick. Odds are that run's going to end quickly, and you can get the same guy you're going to take at that spot maybe a round or 2 later. So don't find yourself at the end of a run.
Yeah, value falls, especially at the quarterback position. After people already drafted a quarterback, they don't need a drafted quarterback again. Yep. And if they want to, it's going to be way later. So you can definitely wait. Pay attention. I think quarterback is the position to watch for that strategy. Moving 100%. On to my number 3. Very, very generic one. I think most people are employing anyway, but I think it needs to be said specifically about this year in 2021. Grab 2 running backs with your first 3 picks. I know we said don't lock yourself into a certain strategy, what position you take. You're certainly going to look at value. If there's a value wide receiver that fell to you and you already took a running back and wide receiver, and this wide receiver should not be there in round 3, certainly take him. But I think the best setup for you this year is to find a way to get 2 top 20 running backs on your team and feel good about it. Because what happens there in round 2, 3, and 4, and even 5, there's a lot of good wide receivers. Because specifically there are not a lot of good running backs there. The running backs we're looking at, there's this weird EU range where it's like Kareem Hunt, Mike Davis, you're reaching out like Javonte Williams. Like, it's just, Travis it gets Etienne, real sketchy. Yeah. There's also a middle tier kind of with Dave Montgomery and Chris Carson in the ADP. What's going on right now? I know we're Dave Montgomery truthers here. He's a top 15 running back for us, but he's in that group, and that's people are going to look at rankings on draft day, and that's where he's going to fall. So try in round 1. If you can get yourself a top 10 running back, feel good about it. And then in round 2, if you can get a workhorse running back as your RB2, that would be great. A guy like Joe Mixon, maybe Antonio Gibson, guys like that. I'd try to stay away from going in round 2 and taking a guy too early like J.K. Dobbins or something like that, and see if you can. Chris Carson, we just mentioned, he'd be a perfect 3rd-round pick for me. He's a workhorse on a team. He gets disrespected. Guy gets a lot of carries. And he's good. He's on a good offense, and he just gets disrespected every year. He gets the injury bug labeled on him. Misses a few games a year for sure, but which running back doesn't in the NFL? Most do. He just carries the name a little more, kind of like our friend Dalvin Cook. So try to grab 2 in your first 3 if you can't. 2 in your first 4. Try to attack the running back position early if the draft goes that way. If not, scoop up the value. Some people might be reaching on running back, and you got to zig when they're zagging, or maybe it's the other way around. But you got to do what you got to do. So let's go ahead and move on to your number 4.
Yeah, real quick, I will say that my best player available is kind of like a general across years thing, but 2021, the running back drop off is quick.
Yeah.
So I definitely would lean towards taking a running back. But my fourth is if your league allows it, don't draft a kicker or a defense. Take another position, and if somebody gets hurt going into week one, and you can put them on an IR spot, you can pick up a kicker or a defense there. You get more value. You get to see them in camp maybe one last week. There's always injuries, and you're probably going to stream your kicker and defense anyways. So might as well start the stream in week one and possibly hit on your last round being a really good value pick that you had no idea. Like Russell Gage was going in the last round 2 years ago, and he ended up being a great player. Like you can find value in the last round. That's kind of where you're throwing darts. But if you hit on that and you had 2 extra chances to do so, that's big. I really think that if your league allows you to do it and you can then utilize an IR spot like after the draft and you put somebody that's hurt for the first couple weeks on the IR spot and then you can immediately pick up a kicker and a defense, that's great because it allows you to take a couple more chances, take a few risks without really having the risk there. And I mean, I think it's pretty much something that you can kind of exploit. Your league may ban it the year after, but if they haven't done it yet, might as well try it.
Yeah, that's something I've heard before. Don't draft kicker and defense, but every time I've heard it, it's never really explained. Some people are very confused on what that means,
Mm-hmm.
and it is just to get the flexibility to take those extra dart throws and have that week. Especially this year, is there an
Yep,
extra week between the last preseason game and the start of the season? I think
I
there is.
believe so.
There's only
That
three
sounds right.
preseason games. I'm not 100% sure on that. I will check the dates. But nonetheless, if there's a week between the start of the season and the last preseason game, anything can happen. And if the guy's on your roster, like some guy's replacement that you took a dart throw on in round 16, well, you got him without having to fight everyone on the waiver wire for him. So that's going to be worth it. And if you're streaming defense and kicker anyway, then what's the point? So I know some platforms are obligated to take someone, all the
Yeah.
players available will go away, and only the positions left that you can draft are available to draft. So that's what you got to do. But if you're doing like a live draft or something, definitely bring it up to your league. I don't think it's going to be anything that anyone's too strong about, and heard
Yeah.
about that they're going to say no. So go ahead and check that one out. My fourth one: draft a safe quarterback and an upside quarterback. So combos like this, go get a guy like Joe Burrow in round 9 who has a lot of upside, but pad him with like a Kirk Cousins or a Matt Ryan just a little later on. So if Joe Burrow comes out a little slow coming off the knee injury last year, then you feel pretty good that you have a guy like Matt Ryan or someone on your team, or you can stream that guy. You can drop him and pick someone else up and wait for Joe Burrow to get back to good health. I like this strategy with the rookie quarterbacks. Grab yourself a safe quarterback like I don't know. I don't want to go too early. But I was gonna say like Tom Brady or Matt Stafford. They're going a little higher than what I'd want, but they're safe quarterbacks. But then go draft Justin Fields in like round 13 of your redraft home league, or round 14, depending on where he goes. Rookie quarterbacks don't always get drafted. Yeah, I know some people like Zach Wilson. I heard he hasn't been doing that good, but someone that has upside that there's not a lot of tape on, that a guy that can win your fantasy league. I know Justin Herbert got people to the playoffs last year, certainly. He kind of slowed down towards the end of the year, but he was great. Obviously, 3 years ago or 4 years ago at this point, Patrick Mahomes was the league winner. Next year, Lamar Jackson. Go find these guys that have a potential to break into the league, and you got them in the double-digit rounds. So by drafting this is the only time I would really draft 2 quarterbacks. If I draft Kyler Murray or if I draft Aaron Rodgers or Dak Prescott, I'm probably not taking a second quarterback because I feel good about those guys being on my roster all season long. But if I want to take a safe quarterback and then go for one of these upside guys that can leap from round 14 ADP realistically, and then whatever points they score, maybe they should have been going to like round 7. And that's a great amount of value you just scooped up just by, instead of drafting one of these low end running backs, I don't know, Gus Edwards, or taking a shot on, I don't want to hate Gus Edwards. I'm a big Gus Edwards fan. But just a backup that you're throwing a dart on, probably doesn't have a lot of playing time in his near future. Grab another quarterback that has a lot of high upside, because it's a quarterback league and they score you a lot of points. So I like that approach. I'll probably do that in about half my leagues. I like to own those top guys too, those top heavy hitting quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson's always fun with the rushing yards. Kyler Murray as well, Josh Allen. But definitely the other half, I'm going to be drafting 2 quarterbacks in those leagues if there's at least 15 or 16 guys on the roster, no matter what. So, Ryan, what is your 4th draft tip?
So my last one is definitely be wary of rookie hype. The NFL Network and major companies love getting behind rookies because they're new. It's the new toy and it's the new gadget. I get it, especially after Justin Jefferson's great year last year. Everyone wants to find the next Justin Jefferson. Where can I find him? More often than not, it's not a rookie. Yeah, I understand the excitement around rookies. You see them on Hard Knocks, you say, "Wow, that guy's going to be like the greatest player of all time," and then you kind of find yourself overdrafting them. Try not to. There's proven commodities out there that will get you 1,200 yards instead of taking a risk and getting like if you thought like, oh, Jalen Reagor's going to be sick last year, and then you take him and you're frustrated. I just think that drafting rookies is kind of a no-go for me just because, like my point number one, I like being safe. Being safe is really what I like doing just because it allows me to go into the year. I can make my adjustments from there, but I've got a nice floor. And with rookies, I have no idea what's going to happen. They could be the greatest players of all time, but more than likely they're going to kind of have to ease their way into the NFL. Like A.J. Brown eased his way into the NFL. Like Odell Beckham Jr. was hurt and then had to ease his way into the NFL. There's guys that take off towards the end of the year, so you can kind of buy rookies later for cheap. But it's tough for me to draft like Jamar Chase at like wide receiver 24. You're going in there with him being your flex or your wide receiver 2, and that's uncomfortable for me, and it should be a little bit for you.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson, people drafted last year and they dropped after the first couple of weeks because he just wasn't playing, getting the snaps. In one of my leagues, I snatched him up and I won that fantasy championship because those are the kind of waiver wire pickups that win your league. So be on top of the waiver wire, find those rookies a week before they actually really break out for the rest of the season, and that's going to give you a really good chance to win the league. So moving on to my last tip. Do not draft to fill your roster or fill all positions, as we mentioned before, but draft against your league. Scoop up the value as it comes to you. I think this is probably one of the most important. A lot of times people go to the draft, and a lot of this is kind of repetitive, but we go to the draft with a certain strategy and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to fill out my roster. I'm going to draft my team. You shouldn't be really drafting your team. You should be drafting to beat everyone else. Look when people make mistakes and capitalize on their mistakes. When they let a guy pass that should not be past them, and multiple people pass on them, you scoop up that value. You want the mindset that you want to have a better roster than everyone else's. So when someone makes a mistake and you capitalize on that, it's a double whammy because they missed out on a good player at a good value, and then you got it at even better value. So it's like it's 2 points for you. So that's a really, really important strategy. It's not really a strategy, it's more of a mindset. When you go to the league, look around, have a plan, have players that you want to draft. And when you see other players in your league do a certain thing that you don't agree with, capitalize on the mistake that is in your mind. So go ahead and do that at your draft, and I think you're gonna have a whole different approach to the draft when you see yourself as a shark in that draft and not a guy that's just trying to build sorry Ryan, I'm not coming at you. You're not just trying to build a nice safe team with some good players on it. You're trying to capitalize. You're trying to take all these guys down. Sorry, Ryan, I'm not coming at you.
It's fine. This is why I don't win mock drafts, but
hey,
don't win.
He's
your
safe.
Season in week.
I think Ryan's got a few third place trophies kind of blurred in the background, but we don't see him right now. It's okay. But hey, if you want to win your league, look back on the video. Look at some of these draft tips and strategies. They're not all for you, but a lot of them should be. A lot of them are just common sense, but like once you play enough fantasy football, you learn. I think one of the most important things I do every year is I write down in my notes in my phone. When I make a mistake in the season or at the draft, I actually write it down, as lame as that sounds.
Because do you actually?
I swear, I'll write it down. I'll be like, don't blow all your fab on the first week running back when there's someone behind him that has a much better chance to, a lot more touches or something, like just because they had a good game. I think we all know a couple names: Malcolm Brown, Nyheim Hines, guys like that last year who came out hot in week 1. And what did they do for the rest of the season? Nyheim Hines was good in PPR, I guess, but not the guy you saw in that
It's
1
one.
week. Yeah, and Malcolm Brown is a week 1 monster. And, of course, can't forget about our boy Sammy Watkins. Look out for him in week 1, DFS players. So go ahead and take these tips to your draft and see what you can do. Thank you for watching. Like the video if you like the video. Really help it, or really appreciate
just like
that.
it anyway.
Yeah, just like it anyway. Just like it. Even if you hate it, like it. We appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. More content coming soon. Soon. Our starts and sits of the week and waiver wire videos coming at you, so you're not going to want to miss a chance to watch those, and more giveaways coming soon. So we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.